Hi, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about a team project we work on internationally. And I have Rosanna Van Sacken with me from Vancouver, or Vancouver-ish, British Columbia, right? Just south of Vancouver.
Yes.
Or are you actually in Vancouver, Rosanna?
I'm in the suburb of Metro Vancouver.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. And I'm in Portland, Oregon right now, and we're both working from home. You may see people pop by. Rosanna's got this incredible virtual background. She's tell me how you would describe your profession, because you're a facilitator, but you do a lot of other things with this in the world of graphics.
Well, I am a proud member of the International Association of Facilitators, and I'm a CPF, a Certified Professional Facilitator, but I call myself a visual facilitator because I incorporate a lot of drawing into my work as much as possible and as much as time allows. So I use a lot of visual tools in addition to drawing in my facilitation work.
Wow. And she's got this incredible virtual background. I think you must have done that yourself, correct?
I did.
And I have this just normal non-virtual background. This is my home office, and Rosanna and I are going to talk today about a project that actually started in May 2018, and Rosanna joined a bit later as a component part of this collaborative international book project called The Power of Facilitation. And today we really wanted to emphasize, how do you do a project like that involves incredibly powerful teamwork? You need motivation to sustain the effort with very busy people, and you need to get a product out, and it's not an unambitious project. And so we want to talk about some of the lessons we learned in having this literally global team. And Rosanna, let's think together, like, who's actually in the book project? Let's just try and name them, and I might have to go to my Basecamp account just to remember everyone's names, because we actually haven't met as a team for a couple of months, not because of COVID, but just because we're about to publish, and now it's been less of a team effort in the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, there are the authors for the book, which I think there are 6 chapters, is that right? And then introduction and conclusion in the back, and maybe 6 or 7 chapters. No, 8 chapters, pardon me, because there are 4 visual practitioners and we each have 2 chapters to the drawing for. So there were 8 chapters and an introduction chapter and a conclusion chapter. And 4 visual practitioners were involved or invited to be involved along the way as the project evolved. So even if, and some chapters have 2 authors and some have 1, so it's about, a good 20 people involved.
Yeah, over the past 2 years, and I think in the final count is something like 15 on our Basecamp thing. But so Kimberly Bain from Ottawa was our lead. She started us all, and she has been an IAF president, and she wrote a couple of chapters, and her husband Mark Bain was also involved in a writing of a chapter. We had, I'm looking at a chapter from Trevor and Malin, I think. This is, I should have written all these names down to begin with, but they were writing a chapter about facilitating change and transformation. And Trevor has been the president of IAF as well as Kimberly. We have a team from India, Stephen and Kavi. And they wrote a chapter towards the end about more sort of personal focus. And we have a very active IF member, Hector from Mexico, who's been involved. For a while we had Noel, who's also been a past president, and his colleague, blanking out on his name, Tom Schwartz from now in Australia, but located in China now. And where are visual practitioners from, Rosanna? Can you name the spots in the world?
Yeah, I'm from Canada, and Chitra is from India, and Kai Lin is from Singapore, and Debbie Roberts from the UK.
Wow, yeah. And we have Martin and Michael from the UK as well. Although Michael, I think, is from more of the European in the European continent. And it's interesting to me, even as I try and remember where everyone is from. After a while, it didn't really matter because we always met virtually. And I was just really proud to be part of a multi-generational, multi-country, multi-language, multi-race, multi-everything. And that was the power for me. And we all got to talk about how ecstatic and excited we are about the power of facilitation. I wonder, now you came in, when did the visual practitioners come in? We started in May.
I think Kimberly invited me in the fall of the same year.
2018.
Yeah, 2018,
wow.
and kind of threw the idea out, would you be interested? And I go, of course. Like, first, I'm a facilitator. I love to support my colleagues and love to learn from them. And of course, when they're talking about the different topics that they'd be writing about, let's go, yeah.
We had that
and,
reaction.
yeah, so, even though I'm not writing a chapter, I was looking forward to learning from all of you and reading all the drafts and adding my visuals to support the team project.
Yeah, and in a while, Rosanna's just going to share one of our logos, but there were lots of backs and forths in terms of checking. You said that two of you were assigned to one of you was assigned to 2 chapters each, and so I know you didn't work on my chapter, but I had Kylan working on my chapter and did some amazing work. And we don't want to show you before it's actually published because it's supposed to get published literally in early October, we hope. We're still hoping. Yeah. Kimberly has been kind of leading that effort. So let's go back and think about what we learned about teams as we did this project. And maybe I would love to hear how it works for you, because you're always having to work with a group, getting enough information to do your work as a visual practitioner. What goes on for you in that process of the teamwork?
So the first top of mind questions that came to me were, okay, we have 4 visual practitioners that are involved in the project. How are we going to work together? Because we've never worked together before. And because we're from different parts of the world, time zone was a bit of a challenge trying to meet. So we did have maybe 2 meetings where all of us were available. And all the other meetings were kind of one-off, or maybe one-on-one or one-on-2 kind of thing, or maybe by email. So in terms of team collaboration, it was a bit difficult because we were from different parts of the world. We hadn't worked together before. And at the beginning, we didn't have a lot of information about what the parameters were in terms of drawing. So we couldn't even start until we know some of those things. So for a while, we were just kind of a little bit anxious, a little bit antsy, but on the other hand, we kind of have to let it go and try not to push too hard, because you all were busy writing, and Kimberly really didn't have time to think about what those parameters might be. And that I'm not sure who has how much book publishing experiences. So there were some questions that people just don't have the answers for until much later on in the process.
Right. Yeah. And I think, Rosanna, that's sort of typical, right, of a project. You'll get some team members that are heavily involved in the early production part, and others that have to come in and like just literally enter and try and, as you say, be patient waiting for more information, but still trying to get the context setting. Is there anything that we did as the author group that helped you become part of the team, and or anything we didn't do that you would have liked us to have done?
I would say that Kimberly has always made sure that all the meetings were open to the visual practitioners as well as the authors, so we could come to any of your meetings, even though you may be discussing stuff that really didn't involve us. And all the emails, all the communications were openly shared on Basecamp as a project management tool. So that was really helpful to just kind of get a sense of who are the authors, how do they work, what are some nuances. And at first we didn't know whose chapters we were doing. And so being a control freak a little bit, that caused me a bit of anxiety because I wanted to know, like, what are those parameters and what are the boundaries and how do we do this and how do we do that? And so I really have to learn to let go of that control in order to make it easy. Yeah.
Mm. I wish we could have been more thoughtful of that. I don't know that any of us have actually published a book before, and I apologize to any authors who have, but a lot of us, write blogs or do other kinds of writing, but this was really a new endeavor for us, and we
Mhm.
had never we weren't even sure if we were going to self-publish or just do an ebook, or there was so many, and whether we should do a website and how should we promote it, and should we work under the umbrella of IAF and
Mhm.
funnel it out as an IAF book, and in the end we decided to have this more of a loose association with IAF. IAF would support us, but wouldn't become under their umbrella. And so I just felt, from my perspective as an author, that you guys were patient with us, and that you had lots of good ideas that helped us think about how to really polish the final aspects of our writing, because when you have to put the writing, you have to conceptualize it with an image, then it really, those two together, the visual and the written word, I think are very powerful when they're.
Mhm.
I had never really thought about it that way, and I
Mhm.
until Kylan was thinking about drawings, and I was trying to help her think about drawings.
Mhm.
And I must admit, I don't think I gave her very much guidance, but she did an
Yeah.
amazing
Um,
job.
I think for me, it was a little bit helpful that I helped co-author a chapter in one of the books called The World of Visual Facilitation with
Mm,
a co-author, and I did the drawing for our chapter, and so it was helpful to have had that experience to guide me a little bit so that I know what questions to ask as well. So that was helpful. And actually, since then, I've done illustrations for another book for a Canadian author, Rebecca Suttons. Uh,
oh, Rebecca's
her
book.
book.
Wow,
Yeah,
fantastic. Oh, that's so
yeah,
great.
yeah. So you're adding on and bringing in all the different experiences to any project, really, and it's helpful to be able to ask some intelligent questions that is relevant to the project, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Right.
every little bit helps. And the one of the biggest thing I got from this team is that everyone was so open and welcoming and generous and encouraging of each other. It was really amazing to witness.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm trying to think what might have helped us do that. I mean, first of all, we are facilitators, and that's a value set that we hold, I think, together, right? We we try to trust the group's potential, and so we tried to trust that our minds would work together. And I know we spent, like, most of our meetings were 2 hours, and I think we had over 20 meetings, but and there would be back and forth and back and forth, and trying to, and then this concept would get dropped, and then we'd pick it up again, and that it seemed like it would never get resolved, and then finally we would just bring it to
Mm,
what we call that convergence, where we said,
mm,
okay, this is what we need to do. And Kimberly was really great about creating deadlines for us. I think probably the biggest learning for me is that a project like this is possible. And sometimes I think when you have a project of this scope and of this length and of this duration and of this level of collaboration, for me, there was some doubt about whether we'd actually accomplish it. But I wanted to go through the process. And so, because I'm a process facilitator, I thought, well, this will be an amazing process to go through. I'll learn a lot about book writing and book publishing. But I didn't actually necessarily believe we'd end up with a product. And I think that's to our credit, that we came up with a beautiful product that has so many layers of understanding. People come from all these different sectoral groups. People wrote about, the corporate world and the not-for-profit world and the personal world, and it's just a beautiful sharing
mhm,
of experiences that we've housed in our minds and bodies for the last few decades.
mhm. Yeah, it
I
was
know you wrote a couple of points. Would you be willing to share those 3 points that you shared with me, and also share the logo that we're going to use for our book,
sure.
Rosanna?
So let me just share the logo and then you can see it. Actually, this was requested when the group was, let me bring it up this way.
So beautiful.
So this was done, I think, after all the chapters were finalized, and people were saying that, well, we want to promote it on social media, we need something. And I think Martin Gilbraith was the one that asked if one of us could do this. And I happened to have some time to do this. And the focus was on facilitation and about impact and growth of both individuals and as professionals. And so what naturally came to mind was nature, where the intersection was. And so I did this quick logo, and we're now using it on Twitter as our book logo. And the other one that I did was this banner that goes for, it was rejigged a little bit, that we could use for Facebook and other social media type, so that the format is a little bit wider. So I call it a banner. I don't know if that's the right word or not. So yeah.
It's so beautiful. I think it's so simple and powerful. And what goes through your mind as you're trying to capture the concept that we were coming to you with?
I think in our communications on Basecamp, some of the words that popped out to me was, we want to talk about a facilitation impact and the power of it, how it make us grow, and that's why those words are in those two trees on the side, and where the intersection is actually the power of facilitation that makes it that way, and of course, we are more and more aware of the greening necessity of our world. And so I chose the color, different shades of green to go with it. Yeah. And yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I just love that logo. I must admit, it's just like so simple and so powerful. And I have been in sessions where we've had a graphic recorder or visual practitioner just be at the back of the room, and the group is processing some ideas, and they're in small groups. And despite all of this, the visual practitioner is capturing words and images on a very long paper. In the days when we did this face to face versus virtual, and now we can do it on a Miro board or a mural board or lots of other collaborative whiteboard tools.
So
yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
go back a little bit, because you were asking, what are some of my key lesson learned? And I think trust was one of the biggest components that it was so evident throughout the entire process. Even though my interactions were mostly with the other visual practitioners and with my two chapters authors, and of course, Kimberly being the chief editor of the project, those were my major interactions. So I didn't have a lot of interaction with the other authors, except when I was listening at meetings. And I really felt that the trust was huge in the group. So from my perspective, as one of the illustrators for the chapters, I did drawings for two chapters, Kimberly's and Trevor and Malin's chapter. And they really didn't say, I want this, I want this. They just gave me complete free rein when I was doing my chapter summary. And so I read the chapters several times, trying to digest and make meaning for myself. And they didn't really come to me and say, I really want this point highlighted or that point highlighted. They just kind of say, do what you think is meaningful for you. And so I did my drawings, I sent them to draft, and I was quite surprised that there was virtually no change at all. Typically in this kind of project, clients would want to make changes at actually more than 2 times. And we, in the practice that we use in the visual world, is that we try to limit the number of rounds of editing to prevent open-ended kind of editing, because you can always improve something, right? So there's no end to it. So if we didn't limit the number of rounds of editing, it could go on forever. So I was somewhat surprised that for one chapter, I had no change at all. And for another chapter, it was a very minor change. And it was the trust was so complete. It was really wonderful to see and experience.
was there anything else you wanted to say about other lessons learned? I'm hearing
Yeah.
that really loud and clear.
Yeah,
The trust
I've
element.
already talked a little bit about letting go of my own control, wanting things, and my own ego about wanting things in a certain way. So that was huge for me to just say to myself, you know, you got to let that go and be patient about it. The other big lesson learned for me was about the non-judgmental nature of everyone. And even though there were a lot of feedback and some of them were quite intense, but people were so open about the feedback. And it was done in such a gentle, kind, and encouraging way that I think the feedback were welcome and embraced. And um, and people were very receptive to any kind of feedback and willingness to change, um, you know, in their content or the way they write.
Mm. Yeah, well, thank you. Those are really, really important points. And I agree. I think on a team, any team project, you have to be willing to receive feedback about how we are all influencing each other or
Mhm.
impacting each other, and that I could see that someone else's writing style was quite different from mine, and we talked about, did that matter? And we decided no, authentic voice was what was important, but we needed to have these threads that carried through. We needed to keep carrying the thread of the power of facilitation. And so that was what kept us, I think, glued together, even though we were coming at the topic of process facilitation. We wanted to show the world this can be applied virtually anywhere by
Mhm.
any group at any moment and with
Mhm.
individuals as well. And so thus the true power of facilitation was manifested in our
Yeah,
collaborative book project.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And facilitating facilitators is not easy.
Yes, we always say facilitating facilitators is like herding cats. And I've never herded a cat, but I can imagine it might not be that easy. So let's leave it here. And it was really a last minute video. Rosanna very graciously agreed to join me. I would have loved to have had our other visual practitioners and authors, but they're all very, very busy right now. And as I know Rosanna is as well. So thank you for being here. I hope we've represented the team well. And please do look for our collaborative book called The Power of Facilitation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rosanna.